Personally, I'll give any heavy metal band with two hot chicks in at least one listen. "2021 has been a pretty good year for the European power metal scene. We've had a really cool release from Dragony, a fantastic return to form from Halloween, two albums for which we've already filmed reviews. We'll put links in the description for those. Also, Italy's Labyrinth has turned in a killer slice of power metal-y goodness, which we'll be doing a review for here in a few weeks. But today we're going to talk about yet another great Italian band, and a pretty young band at that, Frozen Crowned, with their latest release, Winterbane.
Open your eyes, feeling your lies, taking my game to see you in the skies, holding you just
Though definitely a power metal album, this album contains a lot of different influences. You can hear djent, thrash, and a lot of influence from classic British metal.
But they blend it together seamlessly. I'm thinking of the djent guitars all over Angel in Disguise.
The songs on this album vary from pop metal like Water Dancer to more progressive metal like Crown Eternal.
80s British metal has been an influence for power metal really from the outset, but it's rare to find a power metal band, especially a younger power metal band, that wears those influences on its sleeve in the same way that Frozen Crown does. Coming in with a righteous twin-axe assault, and by the way, I can't help but notice over the last few years, power metal in general seems to be moving away from flagrant keyboard abuse and becoming a lot more guitar-centered in its orientation. And for a hopeless riff addict such as myself, this can only be a good thing.
the fallen leaves down on your back are hiding cracks under the bloody red scars of
This is Frozen Crown's third album only. They started with their debut album in 2018, so they've only been recording albums for 3 years.
So, if you want to get in on the ground floor of a great new metal band, this is the time.
Most of the band is actually replacements for this album. Returning are Gaeta Etro on vocals and Federico Mondelli on guitars. They are most of the songwriting team.
Actually, if you look at the credits, all of the songwriting team, everything is written by those two, and apparently that's been the case from the beginning. So the songwriting team remains intact despite the significant lineup change.
Fabiola Bellomo on guitar, Niso Tomasini on drums, and Francesco Zoff on bass are all new.
This record, at least the vinyl edition that we have, is packaged very simply but elegantly, with, as always seems to be the case in heavy metal, some pretty epic jacket art. And then we just have a very simple album and sleeve. Nothing really exciting there. And a nice little insert with a big picture of the band on one side, lyrics on the other. Now speaking of the band, these guys sound great playing together. This is a really kick-butt lineup here. From the scorching twin-axe assault of Fabiola with the unpronounceable last name and Federico with the unpronounceable last name, to the thundering drums from Niso with the unpronounceable last name, and then there's Francesco, I think I can actually say that, Zoff, on bass, who is kind of down in the mix, so I guess he plays a bass, does a thing. I can't really hear that much of what he does.
This is a power metal album, but heavier and almost British sounding often.
I'm thinking, for example, of the Iron Maidenish gallop of The Lone Stranger.
came from afar, catching our breath in the night.
But even on your more typical Euro power metal songs like Far Beyond, you can hear the Priest/Maiden influence. They even include a cover of Nightcrawler from Judas Priest's magnificent Painkiller album.
You know, this cover of Nightcrawler isn't really too different from the Judas Priest version.
Yeah, not necessarily the most adventurous cover on the planet, but at the same time, it's kind of a daring move on the band's part. From where I'm sitting, they're taking one of the very best songs off of one of Priest's very best albums and putting it right up against their own songwriting for comparison. And the fact that it doesn't tower over everything else on the album speaks volumes for the quality of the songwriting here.
These guitar players are phenomenal. They never run out of cool riffs, solos, melodies, harmonies, you name it, they've got it.
And you can cast aside the outdated notions of gender roles in a rock band scenario, because Fabiola is in there tearing it up just as hard as Federico is, with spectacular results. What a great guitar team.
It can sometimes be pretty pop metal with Water Dancer, which is personally my favorite song on the album.
Another cool nod to 80s pop metal on here would be Angels in Disguise, which conveniently comes in right after the Water Dancer. Personally, my favorite here would be Crown Eternal, which dips its toes a little bit into progressive metal. There isn't a single thing on this album that is full-on prog, but that's about as close as you get. Thank God that Jackson V is almost as big as she is.
As for least favorite, the Cookie Monster vocals kill the last track.
You know, the screamo vocals on Crown Eternal are kind of working for me here. They have dramatic effect. On Blood in the Snow, they're just obnoxious. Least favorite? I'm going to go with Maya on Blood in the Snow, mostly because of the god-awful death metal grunts. And it's a shame, too, because save for that, it could easily have been the best track on what is very nearly an all-killer, no-filler perfect album.
The freezing winds above the shore whisper melodies of death.
This album is much heavier than the typical power metal album, and it is a great collection of songs. I truly recommend buying this album.
Wholeheartedly recommended. I haven't heard this band's back catalog yet, but I am certainly going to be taking a step back and getting a look at it. It was pretty exciting to come across such a terrific young band so early in their careers. These guys are young, they are hot, and I suspect the best is yet to come. In particular, this is a songwriting team to be keeping an eye on. Etro and Mondelli turn in a collection of tight, punchy, powerful, extremely well-written tunes, giving this release a truly exceptional level of replay value. This is a band we want to support. I would be excited to see them come over here to the U.S. to do a headlining tour sometime in the future. And the only way that's going to happen is if we buy their records. Buy it. Also check out their back catalog. That's all for now. Until we meet again.
Crank it up a little bit louder.